Good evening, everyone. Coming to you live from Santa Fe, New Mexico. I'm Scott Harrison, Artistic Director of Ironweed Productions, and I want to welcome you to Talking Theater Live. For those of you joining us for the first time, Talking Theater Live is a series of conversations, live conversations between myself and Santa Fe theater artists, sharing stories. Oh, hey, Danielle just hopped on. Sharing stories about their experiences in the theater and the unique paths that led them to creating theater in Santa Fe. And my wife, Lisa Pelletier, is now watching. This is the fun part of doing live video. I'm very delighted to have as my guest this evening, Santa Fe playwright, dramaturg, and co-artistic director of Just Say It Theater, Dale Dunn. Dale,
hi.
Welcome, and thanks so much for this opportunity.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me here.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So just a little bit before we start, just a brief introduction to Dale. Dale's play, The Big Heartless, recently premiered at is it the Griffon? Is that how you pronounce it? The Griffon. The Griffon Theater in Laramie, Wyoming, with Relative Theatrics. She also recently co-produced Constellations with Just Say It Theater, she and Lynn Goodwin at the Adobe Rose Theater.
Starring Scott and Alexandra.
Which was a great, just a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Yeah, it was great.
So Dale, I just wanted to, I always like to start at the beginning and just wanted to ask if there's a early memory that you have of writing a story when you were a child, or kind of early recollections of being fascinated with make-believe and storytelling.
Yeah, I started with poetry, actually. My older brother was a poet, and he introduced me to Gertrude Stein and all kinds of wacky poetry, and would read to me. I'd lay in his hammock in his room.
Oh, nice.
And he'd read poetry to me, and that's what really sort of set off the language in my head of how beautiful language is, and putting words next to each other and how they sound. And I loved being read aloud to. It was one of my favorite things. I was the youngest of 6 kids, so my mom didn't have a lot of time to read aloud to me. So thank goodness my brother and some of my sisters would read to me, and I got that sound in my head from those early instances. As far as for theater goes, I remember I was in 10th grade, and I had a great English teacher who assigned all kinds of different reading material, and she assigned Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot. And I was in my room reading this play. It was the first play I've ever read, and I went, whoa, this is so cool. And I went out, and all my siblings had left home, and so I found my mom and said, you got to read this out loud with me, and made her sit down at the table, and we read Waiting for Godot together, and I was just blown away at what you could evoke with conversation, how wonderful that was. And of course that play is, a groundbreaking play that was so interesting and so minimal and so beautiful that I was struck.
Wow. And when did your being compelled to write start, and what did it start with?
I started writing theater when I was in college and took a drama class at Barnard College in New York. And I had this wacky theater teacher, Howard Teichman. He was a Broadway play guy. He wrote these big, brassy Broadway plays, and I wrote a very strange little piece that took place on the rooftop of a New York City building, and it was called Geraniums, and it was about the dark, underlying, icky feelings that you have, and they sort of come alive, and it was a very bad play, I think, but it was a lot of fun.
Wow, cool. Oh, man. Yeah. So when you first wrote a play, was there a particular thing that you like with that experience? Was there something about it that was most compelling for you? Like, was it writing dialogue, or was it kind of coming up with a story? What?
Yeah, I think it was the idea of writing a story through dialogue that really fascinated me. I never was drawn to writing prose. I went right from poetry to dialogue, and I didn't write short stories. I didn't write novels. I didn't write any of that. My first fascination with being in the theater was through dance, and I was a dancer in high school and thought I wanted to be a dancer, and went off to New York and took a lot of dance classes and realized there's a lot of really good dancers out there, and the work that goes into it is phenomenal, and that I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in a dance studio worrying about whether I ate 2 chocolate chip cookies the night before, because it was all that during it was in the late 70s when I was there. And so,
what type of dance were you?
I was doing jazz and modern, and it was a lot about the body image at that time, and I just thought, I don't really, I love the theater, but I don't really want to be so focused on that. And so that's when I started exploring other ways to be involved in theater, and started writing.
Yeah. And you went to Columbia University. You got your master's, and was that what did you get your master's in? Was it
in playwriting?
Playwriting. Yeah.
Master's of Fine Arts in playwriting at the School of Arts. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of great colleagues, and just this great melting pot of people coming together, and directors and writers. They didn't have an acting program at the time when I was there. It was very young. Yeah. So. I remember the first play I saw that really inspired me when I was in New York was Joanne Akalaitis' production of Through the Leaves. It was a Franz Kreutz play. Do you know his work?
No, I don't.
Very, very different kind of acting style than I was used to. It was so natural and so funky, and not these beautiful people, but it was Ruth Malachek and Fred Newman. They were in Mabu Mines, and I just remember thinking, now that's the kind of theater I want to do.
Interesting.
And that's the people I want to work with. And it took me a while, and I didn't really realize that I was working towards working with them, but when I was at Columbia, I had to do an internship, and they said, pick a theater you want to work with, and most people were picking big Broadway theaters or major off-Broadway theaters, and I said, I want to work with this group Mabu Mines, which is this wonderful experimental troupe that, and I got there, and it was great fun. I was really inspired by them.
And that was Joanne Akalaitis. She's, oh gosh, wow. And what was it like working with her?
Well, you had to earn her trust. She didn't trust everybody, and I earned her trust by typing her scripts at first when, it was before computers, and I had this major big Selectric typewriter, and I'd stay up all night typing her scripts. I was a terrible typist, but you had the whiteout cartridge, and you had to go in there and white things out, and try to make it pretty good, and then go over it, and so she came to trust me with her work in that way as her typist, and then she had me look through plays that she was going to direct and help her edit them and cut them and do it whatever she was going to do. So that's how I got in with her, and it was she gave me my first dramaturg job, and she was fantastic. She was just so inspiring and such a smart woman, and so brave and willing to just do anything to explore what the possibilities were in a script. Yeah, which was really fun to learn.
Yeah. Well, and when you were talking about that and about typing her scripts, I mean, do you, as a writer, because I know now there's word processing and that I mean, do you like to write some things longhand, or do you like to work? Is there a particular way you like to work in terms of putting the story on paper or in the computer?
It varies a lot. A lot of times I'll write in longhand first. Write a scene out in longhand, and then as I'm entering it into the computer, it starts transforming immediately as you're entering it, because going from one page to the next, you just start editing automatically. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I wondered about that thing of just that feeling of writing kind of from your, your whatever, your brain or your soul, your spirit into your hand, and just actually. I still like that. I still like the pen on the paper, and you have to find the right notebook. That has the right kind of paper, and find the right pen, and find the right spot to be. Yeah. So,
And so you were talking about your experience with Joanne Ecolitis, and you were her dramaturg. And I know, and Dale has been a wonderful dramaturg on several of our Ironweed productions.
Yeah.
And the dramaturg is such a critical part of the whole storytelling, and it's a role that a lot of people aren't necessarily familiar with. So I just thought if you could just share a little bit about what, as a dramaturg, what you do and the kind of challenges and things that you face.
Yeah, it can be a really varied job. If you're working on a new play and you're working with when I was working with Joanne Ecolitis, you're helping to develop the piece. It's not just doing research. But when I worked with Joanne, the first dramaturg job I had was working on an opera about Darwin called Voyage of the Beagle. And she was just using all kinds of information from old journals of Darwin's to recipe books from the time. She just was just this voracious gatherer. And I really learned a lot from her doing that, of how to put things together from all kinds of sources, and that was a lot of fun. And so that can be that kind of work where you're helping to form the piece, or like with you when I worked on Our Town, which was so much fun.
Yeah.
It was doing research for you in what was going on at the time. You set the play when Wilder wrote it, so the 1920s, we did a lot of research in that, and what the women were up to, what the men were up to, what it was like, daily life was like. And you had all that wonderful mime work that you had, though. So what kind of bowls would they have? What kind of ovens would they have?
What the kitchen would look like.
What the kitchen felt like. Yeah.
Yeah, that was such a huge help, because it was, for those of you who don't know Our Town, I mean, there's a scene that the whole kitchen morning routine of two women is mimed. There's no props, no set, and I remember you created this great, just huge volume of material from that time period.
Yeah.
I mean, from magazines, journals from the time, photo, images, but to create that mimed world was made so much easier by the research that you did. And also, I mean, as a director, I mean, what I just so value in a dramaturg is just making sure that you're being faithful to the integrity of the story, especially when you're doing a play where it's like, this was told in this time, it needs to be told in the time that it was told, and what was that time like, how can you just visualizing the world, the people. It's really, it's such a critical piece of the whole storytelling and the development of a play.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun working on that. I remember working with the kids, Lexi McAvinci, and who was the other kid, that boy? That was her brother.
Well, there was Lexi, Danny. Danny, Matt,
and Matt.
Yeah.
And they were playing with how they would respond to their parents, and I remember talking about back then. You didn't talk back to your parents, and so they had to dial back on their sass.
Right.
Especially Lexi, who had a wonderful sassy attitude and still does.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, things were a little different back then. Yeah, that's such great stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, along that line, I mean, one of the things I really admire about both your plays and the work that we've done together is your love of story, of real respect. I mean, respect in a way of just that you love the story, and kind of discovering what that is. And I wondered, were there things when you were growing up that kind of you felt like instilled that in you, just a real love of story?
Well, I grew up here in New Mexico, and I spent a lot of my time either walking in the canyons behind our house there. We lived in White Rock on the way to Bandelier, so there was all these wonderful trails and Indian caves and arroyos to explore in. And I remember I used to call them walking operas, where I would sort of sing or tell a story as I was walking of what was happening. And so as you're moving along, you're telling the story. That may be something that, and also riding horses, I'd always be kind of singing to the horse or talking to the horse or telling stories.
Yeah.
So it's very much has to do with being in this beautiful country and outdoors and listening to sounds. And
right.
Yeah.
Interesting. And that's what you were saying too, kind of your initial, I don't know, enticement into language was hearing poetry, and that's interesting to the poetry, and then just inspiration of the land, and that's that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Do you, for those of us who aren't writers and have never written a play, can you describe? And this may be the thing, like when actors get the question of, how do you memorize all those lines? But can you describe a little bit of what the experience is like to see a premiere, a first performance of a play that you've written?
It's terrifying. It is, especially if you haven't been involved in the production. Like going up to Laramie when I went to see The Big Heartless, I had nothing to do with any of it except I was approached by the dramaturg, which was wonderful for them to have a dramaturg to sort of fill in the backstory of the play. And the play takes place in Montana, and it's about these two teenagers who escape from a tough love program and end up at their uncle's house in a remote cabin in Montana. And they really captured the feeling of remoteness and isolation, and they're in Laramie, Wyoming, so they can kind of relate to that.
Right. Yeah.
And it was the first night I saw it, all I saw was all the mistakes or things that I would have done differently, or you're just immediately going, I wouldn't have had her wear that or cross the stage right then, but then I went home and had a good stiff drink and went back the next night. Went not to home, I went to the bar and sat there and listened to the play and saw the play rather than what was not the way I would do it, and I was really thrilled with it. So you have to just kind of, that's the scary thing about being a playwright, is you have to hand it over and be willing to hand it over to the the actors and the director. Sometimes they do a great job. Or like when I saw Parakeet Love down in the Fusion Theater, and Laurie Thomas directed that, and it was totally different from how I imagined it. And at first I was just really amazed, how did you get there? And then I thought, okay, just let it be. Let's see what this other person, because it's all about collaboration. So, and I saw things in the play that I hadn't seen before. So, yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, that's
terrifying.
Yeah,
interesting.
I can imagine, because it's that feeling where you're, if you're acting in something, you've got a certain, you've got a certain amount of control over what happens, whereas, you've done this, you've created this thing, and then you're watching it being done. I could see where that would be terrifying, and also, exhilarating and surprising, and just all that stuff. It must be just quite a ride.
Like seeing you and Jacqueline do Gunplay down at the Fusion. That was a real thrill to see that come to life, because you two are such wonderful performers, and you really brought a lot of intensity to it, and I just really enjoyed what you did. So that was fun, walking into that one and just going, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got it.
That's well, that play, and just speaking of a Gunplay, we're going to be doing a reading of it here in a couple of weeks here in town. It's unfortunately a timely subject right now. Can you just talk about that play? And I know the seed from it was many years ago, and just kind of how it's evolved over the years.
Well, I wrote that play as a monologue to begin with. It was just a one-page monologue when I lived in New York, and I had a friend who brought a gun into the apartment. He was one of my roommates, and he went home to Mississippi and came back with a gun and put it on the kitchen table, and I was just horrified, terrified, and couldn't understand why someone would want to have a gun in the place. And so I wrote this monologue about a woman and a gun. And then when I saw the assignment for Fusion Theater, what their subject matter was, it was something like consequences, truth or consequences.
Right.
And I thought, well, hey, all this gun stuff is going on, and I just read about Trayvon Martin being shot, and the guy claiming that he was afraid for his life, and this stand your ground law and everything was all swirling around, and I wanted to do something to address my feelings about that, and I remembered this monologue, so I took it out and made it into a 10-minute play with two people, the man and wife, and it was really fun to hear my younger voice in the monologue, which was still had that sort of poetry feeling to it, and then to put my older voice in and drive it that way. And I worked with I have a playwright group that I work with, and some actors came in, Kelly and Patrick Briggs, and read it for me and gave some great feedback. And so it was a long time coming, but then I just submitted it to Fusion, and they picked it.
Yeah.
I was really happy.
Yeah. And talk the group that's kind of sponsoring the reading and beginning of June, because you mentioned something earlier too about them with the work that they do now. And
yeah, it's called Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense. And I was just reading the New York Times yesterday, and there was a big op-ed piece by a woman journalist in Texas who was writing about is anything actually being done about gun controls. And she mentioned this group as one of the grassroots group that is actually helping to bring about change. So I was really thrilled that they had approached me to do this reading, that you're willing to do that, and to help in some way to try to stop the madness that's going on, as we were discussing. It's just insane that the shooting at Santa Fe High in Texas, when that came across the news. I have a daughter at Santa Fe High here in Santa Fe, and that your heart stops for a minute just thinking of the possibilities, and my heart goes out to those people who lost kids. It's just a shame.
I mean, the thing I've been, heartened by is just the kids and their response and their eloquence and their passion, and I really hope that some change happens with that. In the last part of the interview here, I wanted to talk a little bit about your producing, which you and Lynn Goodwin started Just Say It Theater several years ago, and just wanted you to talk about how it started, how it's evolving.
We started in 2014, I think, and we started out finding that we wanted to go in and get teenagers to write their own works and also act and put them on. So we got students from NMSA and what used to be Santa Fe University of Art and Design, and did classes at each one in playwriting, and then brought the students together to do a production at the end of the semester. Insane idea. But it was a lot of fun. It just about killed us. It was to, start from how to write a play to let's get an idea and put it together, to write the play, to direct the play, to put the play up. It was a lot.
Right.
It was a lot. We had big high hopes, but we had a lot of fun. And, so we did that for a couple years. We did Left to Our Own Devices, which was a great piece about everybody on their phones and on their computers.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, that was a really great piece. And we did Borders, Crossing the Line, about all the different borders. And so then after we finished with that, we sort of had to take a little hiatus because we both got a little bit burned out, Lynn Goodwin and I. And she went to New York for a year, and I stayed here and did some writing and finished my The Big Heartless writing that. And then when she got back, she was like, let's do something. And we didn't really need to go back into the schools. Santa Fe University was closing.
Yeah.
And New Mexico School for the Arts, those kids, they got a lot on their plates. They don't really have time to do another thing. So we decided to produce a new play. It's not a brand new play, but we went for Nick Payne's Constellations, and you and Alexandra in it. And we approached the Adobe Rose and used their space, and they were kind enough to split it with us. So that was great because we didn't have to put up a whole bunch of money.
Right.
They were willing to take a risk on us, which is fantastic.
Yeah,
and they were so generous in that way. And so it turned out to be a great success. We had sold out houses quite a lot. And people were so enthusiastically supportive, and Lynn's directing was wonderful, and I got to act as dramaturg and sort of co-artistic director, and it was a lot of fun. And working in that way together, we ended up doing the music together, and
right.
We did everything.
Yeah, because you compose. I mean, you composed the music on your
and recorded it at my house with Dan Pyburn came and recorded it for us, and all the voices that you and Alexandra lying under the piano. It was just a great creative time. I just really enjoyed working with everybody.
Yeah, me too.
I found out I really enjoyed producing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So, and what kind of particular things you were kind of most jazzed about producing, or what did you most enjoy?
Having the control to have it be the way you wanted it to be. And hiring the people that you know are going to do what you want to do, and having the control to say, no, that's not the way it should be, or it's really nice to have the reins and to make a piece of theater the way you want it to be from beginning to end.
Right.
So that was very satisfying. I found doing the marketing was really hard. That's not my cup of tea at all. Right. I would much rather do the creative part.
Yeah, I remember.
But even going on Facebook and posting stuff is like, oh, do I have to?
I know. I have a very vivid memory of when we did True West several years ago, and we did it. And we decided for some reason to do that one over 4 weekends. We've normally done 3, but the first weekend, Thursday, opening night, we had a kind of a decent crowd. Friday and Saturday night, we had really nice crowds, and then that was only the second thing that I had produced here in Santa Fe, and so. There's that feeling after Saturday night of like, all right, so we can just kind of ride this thing. And I'll never forget the Sunday, the first Sunday matinee. I found out that there were 5 people in the audience, and I was like, I was talking to my friend, like talk to John Flax with Grotesque. I'm like, John, what do I do? And he's like, you gotta market it to the end. I mean, but anyway, it was a very, very sobering but important lesson to learn.
You got to keep your foot on the pedal the whole time.
Yeah, you got it. So
I saw that production of True West. That's what made me when I first came to Santa Fe, and I came and saw True West, and I went, oh, okay, there's theater here. All right. And this is the guy I want to work with. So I just started volunteering for you.
I remember that.
I did house managing and stuff, and then finally got to be dramaturg. I really enjoy working with you.
Well, same here. Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I don't know, one of my favorite things about theater is you find those people that you just love collaborating with. I mean, those are just golden. And,
nothing like it.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about theater is the collaboration.
Yeah, I agree. And it's I'm always just amazed at the just to the different connections I'm always interested in learning just the histories of there's so many talented artists here in Santa Fe, and just hearing about their histories, or some that are from here, some coming from different places. What eventually, just speaking of that, what brought you back to Santa Fe? I know your family's here.
I had a lot of family here, and my parents my father had already passed away, and my mother was getting older. we'd lived in, Steve and I had met in L.A. and moved to Key West after he sold his fundraising company. He wanted to get as far away from as possible from it, so they wouldn't be calling him and saying, "Can you just come in and help us?"
Right.
So we went to Key West. We were there for about 5 years. It was fun at the beginning. But after a while, it was like, this is not a place to raise kids. And people go there to drop out. And I wasn't really ready to drop out. So we looked around and it was like, why move somewhere where we don't know anybody? And I really wanted to be near my mom and my sisters. And we came to Santa Fe, and Steve had just started a career in photography. He was, and he fell in love with the light here.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, okay, I think I can move there. Even
Sold.
though there's no water, I think I can move there.
Yeah, nice.
So we came back here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know my wife Lisa loves the ocean, and she heard somebody say, and she kind of says, even though she does miss the water and likes to get back to it, but she says sometimes in New Mexico it's like the sky is your ocean, which really makes a lot of sense.
It does make a lot of sense.
So,
I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
But I'll tell him that.
Yeah, maybe that'll help.
Because he's starting to go,
he's like, no, I still miss the water.
Maybe some water.
Yeah, that's right. The sky's nice, but I still miss the water.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I just wanted to finish up with one last question. Just if you could kind of describe, if there's either a kind of a moment that you remember, or just kind of a general moment that you know of where you, as a writer, when this moment comes along, you're just like, this is why I love to write.
I think it's when you know that you're really telling the truth, and you know it when you've written something that's really getting down to the bones of what it is that you're trying to say. And often it has to do with, I find that I write plays in response to something that I find that's unjust or not working for me. Like Gun Play or The Big Heartless, it has a lot to do with kids being put away in reform schools and things. So I'm usually responding to something that I didn't find, or like Body Burden, I found out they'd done a lot of experiments on kids up in Los Alamos and radiation experiments. So getting to the bones of that and finding a way to talk about it without preaching or seeming pedantic or anything, and getting rid of all the exposition and all the, but getting down to the real true stuff is, I think, the wonder of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, Dale, thank you so much for this. This has really been fascinating and rewarding, and I really appreciate the conversation.
It's
and the
great
time.
to talk with you, Scott.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us. And just a reminder that we will post this on our in videos on our Ironweed Productions Facebook page. So please like us and follow us on Facebook. Also, Theater Santa Fe at theatersantafe.org has been generous enough to post our interviews on their community tab on their website. So you can also check the interviews out there, or tell friends who weren't able to watch it live. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you again, Dale, and hope everyone has a good night. Good night.
Good night.